Try number 52. This is a post that I found a couple days ago, and I used a couple screenshots from this in another video, and I thought I should just make a video about this whole situation. So as I've been saying for years now, the Cash for Kids system is a really big issue. And one of the branches that everybody goes in, whether they're in a bad family situation or not, is the school system. Okay, wait a minute, because my throat's dry and I'm kind of sick. So, okay, hold on, because now I'm yawning. The thing with the school system is that you gotta go, but if you have abusive parents or no parents, you can get into the more abusive branches of the school system, part of the Cash for Kids system. So this would be like SPED, alternative schools, Catholic schools, military schools. And as I've mentioned before, these systems all started off for eugenics and trafficking. And so originally the pagan Roman Catholic Church played a huge role in every branch of the Cash for Kids system, especially the orphanages, but that's a whole nother video. Anywho, I don't know what I was going to say. I spent my childhood locked in a cage. Hello. I have no one that understands what I'm about to say, and years of therapy hasn't helped me feel any less alone with what happened to me and many other children in Georgia. I grew up in a special education quote-unquote program in Georgia called GNET. Under this quote-unquote program, children with quote-unquote special needs and quote-unquote behavioral disorders, as they love to say, and learning disabilities were kept segregated from other children, oftentimes in separate schools, in the basements or in trailers kept far from the school. A common punishment for children in these classrooms involved locking kids in quote-unquote quiet rooms, which were these small rooms often no bigger than a broom closet, sometimes with caged war ceilings, diamond cut steel doors, pee and blood-stained walls, and carpet, and sometimes either had a camera or a double-sided observation glass that had a mirror for the child to be observed. I went to these schools in the 90s and early 2000s. Teachers would abuse us and send a child to these rooms for any minor infraction or outburst. And yeah, something that I noticed is that the people running these placements, especially in the South, they're commonly in this deep religious trauma, flipped around Protestant white supremacist hijacking religious stuff like Southern Baptist in general, honestly. What's the other thing called? White supremacist Christian nationalism. And of course, I always talk about the Willie Lynch syndrome house niggers because they're a big issue. And so it's a lot of them. It's also a lot of boule sellout, Freemason people that also, for whatever reason, considers themselves Christians, but that's how the religious delusions work, really. So I'm not even going to go into all that. But it's a lot of them. And as I always say, Georgia is a quote-unquote Black California for many reasons. But one of them being, the religious cult issues. And, what was I going to say? I met this one teacher I was forced around this one teacher, they weren't even really teachers, but this one staff lady when I was in the Jim Crow self-confined placement. And so pretty much she had a lot of religious trauma because they were in that common false gospel religious stuff where, like, her mom felt like she had to marry this dude. I wonder how much older than her he was, but she felt like she had to marry this dude who didn't like her and would terrorize all of them, and so it messed them up. And she would, like, go on these trauma dump rants about how her mom and her had to run across the street to go to church while their dad was shooting at them for going to church. And she would be like, my mom did exactly what she was supposed to do. She stuck through that marriage. And I was like, and me and other people in the class were looking at each other like, okay then. And whenever whenever she would get mad at me and the other people in the class, quote unquote class, about stupid stuff, she would be like, I'm sick of this church, I'm sick of it. And then she'd be like, there's only 3 pastors in this church and you don't question the pastor. But yeah, there's some deep stuff with all that religious mess in a lot of places. And yeah, so there was that. And even the little bit of regular school I did go to and the little bit of time I did stay in GA, there was this one teacher who was an actual teacher, a substitute, and she was the history teacher. And I remember there was this one African dude who was like an assistant or something. He was like 90 something, but he was an assistant. And I remember he would talk to me and the other kids in the class, and he'd be like, I understand how you guys feel, but you got to get off the phone. I understand that you're in prison listening to this crazy lady. And she'd go on rants about how she was a pastor's daughter and about how her dad was secretly an alcoholic and how she was mad at her brother and he was selfish for overdosing. And I remember this other girl in the class, she was like, her brother's gonna hide him. And one time she was going on this rant about how her brother overdosed and he was being selfish for overdosing. And this girl in the class was like, what does this have to do with Mesopotamia? But yeah, and that was in regular school. But as you should know, schools hire anybody. That's kind of been an issue, but the system is what it is on purpose. So yeah, my point with that is that these systems are like made for eugenics. They are what they are on purpose, and they're also rooted in a lot of cult stuff. That's the point I was getting at. So yeah. Oh yeah, and I was supposed to also say they will get mad at you for doing anything that they don't want you to do. Now, luckily, I wasn't in GNET. So I originally thought I was in GNET because, for one, the circumstances that my abusers did to get me put in there were like I really didn't know what was going on and I wasn't told that was going to happen. 2, the self-confined staff lied so much it was hard to really know what was actually going on because they wouldn't be upfront about what the placement actually was, other than the fact that it wasn't for academics. And that's all they would really admit. I didn't even know about GNET till like somebody had did some researching and found out about GNET and told me maybe that's what I was in, but I eventually found out that I wasn't in GNET because, quote unquote, this placement is for mental illness. Wait, no, that's not what happened. Somebody in the class was doing or saying something that Miss B, that's why I used to call her back in the evidence channels. Miss B was the I'm sick of this church lady. So she got mad at whoever for whatever they were supposedly doing. And then she was like, you better stop before we send you to GNET. And I was like, but wait a minute, I thought this was GNET. And then they were like, this is not GNET. GNET is way worse than this. And I was like, well, what is GNET for? And they were like, GNET is for mental illness. And they were like, we don't deal with mental illness here. And if somebody was mentally ill, they would be somewhere worse, which would be GNET. So, yeah, but of course, quote unquote mental illness just means stupid stuff, really. Usually, well, of course, trauma symptoms because mental illness comes from trauma, but pretty much whoever doesn't have anybody to fight for them, you'll end up in these different branches of the Cash for Kids system. That's the end all be all. You don't do anything to get in these placements. Anywho. No. Did I finish? No, I think I'm supposed to mention the whole situation where I got in trouble for reading a book. But I don't really remember much about that story, to be honest. I'm trying to remember where I was. Okay, hold up. Early 2000s. Wait a minute. Okay. I had some mucus buildup. So, early 2000s, teachers would abuse us, send a child to these rooms for any minor. Okay, I read that. I started being put in these rooms as early as 6 for being too hyperactive and spent almost every day in one until the 9th grade. I struggled with depression. It came from a rough home life with an alcoholic mother, had no father figure, positive adult interaction. Most of the kids involved with this program were troubled, and a lot of them were young black children who were just there because the predominantly white schools didn't want them in their classes. This punishment really screwed up my head and future. I remember when I was 9, I was depressed because I found out I had a father, brothers and sisters who never wanted me. So I came to school and put my head down my desk and didn't do any work. My teacher was mean and snatched me out of my desk and threw me in one of these rooms for the whole day. That's one thing I was glad about, though. When I was in the self-confined place, when the teachers didn't put their hands on us, honestly, I kind of wish they would have just put their hands on us instead of doing all the stupid stuff that they did do. But, well, I keep forgetting they weren't even teachers. I usually just call them staff members in, but yeah, so they didn't put their hands on us. They would say that's too much paperwork. In fact, I remember this one time when the old kids that were in the class before, most of them had left or died, probably done a lot themselves. Anywho, so when new kids came into the class, what happened was Miss B had instigated some fights. And that was the first time I ever seen anybody actually do anything. Like, literally, no one ever did anything. And that's why, like I said in the last video, me and the other kids would make jokes about how the quote-unquote normal kids were actually bad. But, of course, we were in there because of our parents, not because we did something. And the other couple of kids in there, because there was only like 5 of us or less than that, the other kids in there were in there because they were in the foster care system. But anywho, Miss B instigated the fight, and then she let the boy get beat up too. She started the fight, started the argument, got them to argue, and then the smaller dude, because he was like, I would have never thought he was 17, just like how people would never think that I'm the age I am. He was like super duper small. Like, I would say the size of maybe like a 12, 13-year-old, so pretty much he was like me. And the other kid was, I don't know, 14, but he was fighting him. It wasn't that bad though. It wasn't like anything serious. They really were barely throwing punches, but they were trying to fight. And so the smaller kid, the 17-year-old, tried to run behind Miss B. Tell me why Miss B dodged out the way. And then, of course, they got in trouble. But I felt bad for the other kid, though. I mean, everybody's situation was screwed up. One boy had been in special ed his whole life. He said he's never not been in special ed. And that's the thing, though. This placement wasn't even for academics either. It was just like a punishment, ISS type thing. But apparently he had been in those his whole life. Just for having like, I don't know, mid-autism, or I'd say something like that. So, yeah, but of course he was also in an abuse situation, and that's really why he's in there, because his mom and quote-unquote stepdad that needed to be in jail won't stand up for him. Other than that, he'd be in regular classes just like everybody else in there would. With the smaller dude, his situation was particularly messed up. I think he was in foster care. I know, like, the staff would always talk about how his mom didn't want him. And I remember this one day, the staff had did something to him, and then he had left. No, he wouldn't go to, it was something like that. He either left the class or wouldn't go. And he said he was just going to lay down in the middle of the street. He was laughing all the time. I don't know, it was funny, but I think he just did that to keep from crying. But, I mean, that's what you gotta do. But the bad thing is, stuff like that is used against you, although, like the staff said, this placement wasn't for quote-unquote mental illness, so they really didn't, like, do or say much about that. But what else was it? It was something else that happened. Oh, yeah, and he had birth defects, too. So, like, his head was shaped, like, different and stuff like that. And so when he first came to the class, I remember the staff were talking junk about him, because they would pretty much go on these long 50,000 hour rants talking junk about different people in the class. And like I said, there weren't even that many of us in there, but there was more people in the class this go around than like the one before, where of course everybody either drops out or dies, because that's how these placements go. The point is to get you to drop out or die. So, yeah. Oh, what was the other thing? Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, back to the birth defect. So the staff would call him Quasimodo. And Mr. B, he was like, the moment I saw that boy's head and face, I wondered if he was really supposed to be in here, because he looked like he may be mentally ill or something, or severely disabled, and we don't deal with that. Honestly, all he really did was laugh a lot, and then eventually I didn't see him anymore, because his mom or his aunt, I think his aunt got mad at him because he wouldn't sit in that one spot in that one room for hours, and he said he was gonna go lay down in the middle of the street while laughing, so they got him locked up or something like that. But I mean, I stopped going anyway a little after that, so it didn't make a difference. Yeah, but hopefully he's okay though. Hopefully, cause he's definitely the type that'll get easily dragged through the Cash for Kids system. I mean, most people never really realize that they can actually leave if they actually do it right. Like, people, I mean, it's hard to, dang, keep choking. It's hard to get out, but it's possible. It's not easy, but, well, that depends, though. If you're in, like, higher level Cash for Kids system, higher level trafficking, that could be different. Like, there's some people that are locked in rooms in the middle of nowhere. They're locked in buildings in the middle of nowhere. And that's harder, but I mean, I've even seen people get out of those, but of course it takes teamwork. Because, I mean, there's no bus, there's no car, none of that. There's horses. Sometimes there's horses. Okay, I'm trying to remember where I was, because I went off on a rant as usual. Well, there was that. Now I gotta look for it. Okay. I wasn't let out to even use the restroom. I was terrified, and they kept the lights off the whole time. I begged and screamed and asked them to turn on the lights. When they eventually opened the door at the end of the day, my mother found me in the fetal position, rocking back and forth on the ground. That's honestly all you can do in placements like this, especially in ones like this, because You can't go anywhere. If you leave the room or the trailer, whatever in the world, you're in trouble. You can't leave your desk. You can't stand up. You can't go to the bathroom. There probably is no bathroom even in the trailer building you're in. So it's like all you really can do is get into a dissociative state because you can't go anywhere. Which is really problematic when you're claiming that people in there are quote-unquote bad black boys with ADHD and stuff like that. Okay, hold up. I had chewed the skin off of my right index finger, and I developed a tic to this day where if I get anxious, I bite that finger, which is now a callus, and it's one solid callus. I remember trying to do my math on the 6th grade at a school called Burwell in Coweta. Oh gosh. I've heard enough about Coweta County, and I haven't even been there, I don't think. Or was I there? Yeah, because that's where East Coweta High is. I think that's what it was called, where the child molester school resource officer and teachers were. I didn't go to school there, though, but I know people who did that I also met another Cash for Kids System branch, but that's another story. Anywho, let me just say Coweta County is not it. And a young girl named Erin was thrown in the cell in the classroom next to ours. She was nonverbal but could only say, "My name is Erin." And she cried, screaming and banging the whole day, shouting that sentence over and over until her voice was raw. These teachers were monsters and would laugh and taunt us often if a child spoke out against the abuse that was done to us. They weren't treated kind. We were also not given the same education as the quote-unquote normal. Oh, here it goes. Because like I said, I haven't actually read all this yet. The little screenshot that I put in that other video, that's the only part I read. So, yeah, the normal kid thing is not new. And that's the thing, though, when it comes to the SPED system in Georgia versus the alternative schools in North Carolina. Like, in the alternative schools, you don't get told that you're special ed, and you don't get it beat into your head that you're quote-unquote SPED. You also don't ride the short bus for no reason either. But that's another thing. Often, we had old and outdated books and lesson plans. I would have to retake the same classes over and over anytime I was transferring or moved around to other schools. I was allowed to return to normal school in the 9th grade, but unfortunately, I couldn't cope with it. I was heavily bullied and had completely given up on myself. I failed the 9th grade twice. You know what, though? Something I've noticed is that the 9th grade is the hardest grade to pass when you're in like a messed up situation. That's the one where you either keep getting held back till 21 or you leave. And dropped out of school. Also, briefly in the 5th grade, my mother had given me to an orphanage. It was called the Methodist Children's Home of Decatur. Not Decatur. And there they used the same punishment on their children, so I was getting double the bull crap. Due to my lack of trust in people, I had developed a frog addiction. Wait, I guess I'm supposed to say drug addiction. I was thinking, like, maybe is that like when you get to a point where you're so scared of people that you only like dogs, but instead it's frogs. Actually, I had one of those at one point where I would just sit in the woods playing with these albino frogs in sewer water. But I thought it was a lake, but I mean, most of the lakes were sewer water. But yeah, so, I mean, the frog addiction, I mean, it makes sense. and ended up serving a 3-year prison sentence for theft. And that's also how these systems funnel you into other systems, like the adult cash cow systems, which I think I kind of mentioned in that video I made about this post I had made like some years ago about how Child's Play franchise actually is about the Cash for Kids system. I mean, it's about other sick stuff too, but it shows a good example of how the Cash for Kids system works. What made me sad was how well adjusted I became to prison. It felt so normal. I was able to eventually turn my life around somewhat and got my record cleared, married with a beautiful wife and son, and have on the surface a decent life. I had buried all of this in my soul until a few years ago when a child advocacy group had asked me to testify before Congress on behalf of all the children that were tortured in GNETs. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do this, and the lawsuit against the state on behalf of this group never came to fruition. Apparently, a young boy, I believe his name was Jonathan King, had hung himself. I was going to mention this too, and I heard about something like this happening in a similar place in Alabama too. Hung himself in one of these cells, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution wrote a story on it. I'm writing all of this because I feel none of us ever got justice, and know this program resulted in a lot more deaths and ruined futures for generations of forgotten children. We never had a chance. While listen to normal kids laugh and play, we screamed and begged for our lives each day. The fact that rhymes, though, that's not funny. I mean, I guess it is to me because, I don't know. Because these types of situations mess up your sense of humor. None of us had a loving parent to wipe our tears and hold us. And of course, a lot of people get put in these placements by their parents, not even just because of trauma symptoms. But anywho, teachers were to be feared and never trusted. We were raised to be inmates, drug addicts, and I don't know if I can say that, but I don't curse anyway, so I don't know. Is that a curse word? Cattle for the slaughter. Have so much hate in my heart, and it's robbing me of the joy I could have today. Every day I'm haunted by the loud slam or the steel doors in those classrooms. I have nothing in common with anyone, and no amount of medication and therapy can fix me. Because of course there are no quote-unquote meds for mental illness anyway, or no quote-unquote meds for quote-unquote mental illness. Why? Why can't we get any justice for what was done to us? Why did I get to see people graduate and go to college and have friends? Most of the kids I knew were either dead or in prison. Oh man. You know, this is reminding me of... Well, honestly, I think only one dude died. Not that that's any better, but I was getting some memories mixed up. Anyway, imagine locking a child that you love. Wait, hold up. Looking at a child that you love, they call you mommy or daddy, and they hug you so tight. They are pure and need all the love in the world. Now imagine someone hitting them and dragging them until their little nails rip off onto the carpet, and they're thrown into a tiny and dark cell. That is kind of weird, though, that the sped placements have carpet, but the regular schools tend to have, like, marble floor or something like that. Not that that's that relevant. I'm just thinking about that. But then again, like, I know this one alternative school that I went to for a little while. It was a children's home, too, so I guess maybe that's why they had carpet, but it's still weird, though. Anywho. their screams muffled as the metal door slams on their face. Wouldn't you fight tooth and nail for them? No one did for us. And when it was exposed, nothing happened. No one cared. And that's the thing. And I noticed that with the whole Diddler situation, that's honestly super duper old news. But now, since like he's being blackmailed by whoever is mad at him, now people act like they care all of a sudden about something that was been known. And also people act as if he's the only one. But now all of a sudden people want to be clout chasers and talk about the situation and try to like stand with Allie Carter. Allie Carter's been talking about her situation on the internet for years before this whole Diddler situation. And she's mentioned other people. But now people want to either try to quote unquote stand with her out the blue now because it's popular, or they want to try to talk junk about her. But all in all, people are like acting like they care because it's a big topic now, the higher level cash for kids system. But people really don't care though, because the thing is, in situations like this, like what this dude is talking about, these lower level branches of the cash for kids system lead up to the higher level stuff, but nobody cares about the people who are the kids who are thrown into the cash for kids system. It could go up to higher level trafficking because, quote unquote, they're the bad, crazy, and retarded kids, so they deserve their punishment placements that they're in. But then when it gets to the higher level, open SRA stuff, then all of a sudden, at least when it's popular, like right now, people claim they care. But I mean, at the end of the day, until people actually really get together and do something, it's a lot of talk. And I mean, nothing's wrong with talking, although, like I said, a lot of people are just talking for clout. But nothing's wrong with talking, but it just doesn't, it's still not doing anything. Like, I mean, I like to make these videos in hopes that people who need to see them will see them, but I still will want to actually do something and not just talk and talk and talk, because it doesn't do much at the end of the day. Trying to remember where I was. No one did. Okay, hold up. Generations of kids lost. That reminds me of the pagan Roman Catholic Church's baby scandals. We all wanted the same things you give your kids. I tried to go to college into 30s, and the pressure and PTSD from my school have kept me from completing it. I'm writing all this because I need someone to care. Please share this story. My name is Samuel, and everything I've written is the truth. You can look up the GNET program yourself. I'm scared and I'm losing my mind, and I just want to stop thinking about it. I'm glad that I wasn't like in the self-confined placement that long though, because like I said, a lot of people spend like most of their lives in these systems, and I would say honestly, the cash for kids system, I mean, it played a role in my situation, but I wasn't really in a lot of placements. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't in a lot, especially not like the ones where you actually stay there and you live there for months and years. I wasn't in many of those either. Most people are in them way longer. And of course, I'm not trying to like, what's that word? The opposite of catastrophize. I'm not trying to minimize it, but my point is that a lot of people spend most of their lives in these and they don't get out, and they don't even realize that they actually could possibly get out and lay low and all that. So, I was supposed to be getting to a point here, but I don't remember what it was. I guess going back to the fact that these placements exist just add to people's abuse situations so much more, because like, imagine if it was still the old days where you get abused by relatives or whatever, or you're an orphan, but you don't get kidnapped and thrown into juvenile jails and group homes and people's mansions and stuff like that. I mean, not saying that kidnapping didn't always exist, but obviously these global punishment, treatment, trafficking organizations didn't always exist. And they just add to people's situations so much. I don't know what else I was gonna say. What point was I getting at? I don't know, but GNET program yourself. I read that. I want to stop having nightmares and I want our voices to be heard. I carry the weight of all these kids on my shoulders and I'm tired. I can't give my family what they deserve because my soul is still locked somewhere in a cage in Georgia. And so, yeah, there's this. How much space do I owe? Probably not any space. Maybe I'll put what I was about to say in the description.